most requested topic so far. We're going to be actually asking for everyone's feedback again in sort of towards the end of today's session for future topics, but we got a lot of requests for this one, so we're stoked to be covering it today. So a few housekeeping items as always. So we will not be spending a lot of time in PowerPoint or listening to my bad jokes or Jason and I make fun of each other. We will be spending most of our time in GP. We cannot hear anyone, unfortunately. So if you have a question, you should have a question box, I think on the far right of your screen. Feel free to type it in. We'll come to your questions towards the end. When Jason's talking, if we're losing you and he's going too fast or talking financial gibberish, let us know, and I'll try and slow him down, make him speak non-GP tech language. Otherwise, we'll come to your questions towards the end. On the last session, we actually got a bit of an overwhelming amount of questions. So if we cannot get through all of them, I'll reach out to you afterwards, and we'll kind of get to your questions one-on-one to make sure you all have the answers. So today we're going to be giving away gift cards to Tim Hortons and Dunkin' Donuts for those that are in the US, which I think is quite a few of you today. And the last point, before we go through sort of some of the agenda items here, is GP 2013. So I just want to make a point of this. I know I keep doing it, but GP 2013 is no longer in support. So if you're on it, get off of it and upgrade. If you need, costs or you need help to figure out what your options are, reach out to us or reach out to your current partner. But again, it's no longer in support. I think as of, was it April, Jason?
I think March.
March? Okay. Either way, it's not supported. So, let's get you off of that version and onto one of the latest versions or newer versions. And of course, the latest version is GP 2018. So today's sort of agenda is pretty simple. We're going to be going through a demo of the product after we do a bit of an overview on who we are. I know a lot of you who join sort of every few weeks, which we really appreciate, hear this a lot, but hey, I'll throw in some fun jokes and a new picture for you anyhow. We're going to be going through some of the next training events that we have coming up, and then we'll end with some giveaways. So Jason, let's roll through. So first of all, you're going to see a picture of Giovanna's baby shower a few weeks ago. So big congrats to Giovanna. I think it's her last week. Is it this week or next week?
Sometime soon? I think it's next week.
Okay. And for all of you that are looking at that picture and you're wondering who that really old guy is on the left, the far left, that's actually Jason. Just in case anybody was sort of wondering. And the really good looking guy in the middle there is John, just so everybody knows. You would agree with that, right, Jason? I'm going to move on.
We'll start after the webinar, maybe.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. So what do? We're a GP partner. We've been doing it for, over 18 years. We're passionate about it. We implement the product. We support it afterwards. So for those of you that are already using GP, which is probably all of you who are on today's session, a big part of what we do is supporting you guys day to day, rolling out new features, and of course doing GP version upgrades. We also give away 5 free hours to all of you who are currently selecting ATOM or GP365 as your partner. So that's kind of a thank you each year and a way of giving back to all of the customers that support us. We really appreciate the support, and of course to all of you who are joining these sessions and listening to us. Last thing here before I sort of turn it over to Jason is we've actually created GP365, which is a software as a service version of GP. So if you're tired of going through GP upgrades, or you're tired of gaps of GP, like lack of a solid budget center or having to use outside products, GP365 may be the answer. It's a completely hosted version of GP, accessible from anywhere, and it's a really, really great product. I know that seems biased since it's ours, but it is. So if you're interested, shoot me a note. If you have any support inquiries or you're interested in having us help there, my email will be on the last slide, or you can email info@gp365.ca. And I think that's about all from me. Maybe I'll hand it over to you, Jason, before you decide to get back at me for the picture.
I'm pretty sure everybody's saying, thank God that's over. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, so thank you, though. And maybe before I hop in here, let me just apologize in advance if there's any noise. There's some construction going on where I am, so if suddenly I go quiet, it's me yelling at people to try to be quiet. So hopefully it's not too disturbing. But anyway, so we're going to be covering Management Reporter today. For all of those of you that are using Management Reporter, this is going to be kind of an introduction course, and we're going to be covering some of the more complex stuff in future webinars. So this is just basically our first webinar on Management Reporter, and we want to make sure that we cover the basics before we get into the really into the weeds. So just a little overview of Management Reporter to start. So Management Reporter is a product that is used to develop financial statements, essentially, although you can use it to build any report that's driven from the general ledger. It only really reports on the general ledger. It doesn't pull from the subledgers. So again, with some exceptions, you can pull in special columns and you can get some information from those subledgers, but generally speaking, it's a general ledger reporting system. So of course, the balance sheet, income statement, or profit and loss statement, statements of cash flow and trial balance, those are the most common reports that are built in Management Reporter. But as I said, you can use it to build any report that's pulling information from the GL. It also gives you a bunch of options when it comes to automating those reports, so distributing them. So it comes with its own report library, which it's basically a free application that anybody can download on their machine called Report Viewer. And we'll look at it in a few minutes. That allows you to view those reports, and there's no licenses that are required. So all the reports in Management Reporter are made up of what are called building blocks. And what those are made up of are, first of all, row and column definitions. And if you want to think of that as like an Excel spreadsheet, that's really sort of what they were going for when they designed the product. So you combine rows and columns to develop the reports themselves. And then you can overlay what are called reporting trees, which will allow you to sort of drill and roll up information from your various GL segments. So if you have a segment, for example, called business unit or department, you can actually drill down into those business units or divisions and see the information for each. And then finally, all of those three are combined in what's called a report definition or a report option, which basically tells Management Reporter information about how you want to display the report, what kind of headers and footers you want, that sort of thing. So that's really the basic building blocks of Management Reporter. The concept is that you're going to want to try to build reusable building blocks. So if you think about it this way, if you've got one report that's maybe a detailed report that has every account in your general ledger, you can reuse that same what's called row definition over and over again in different report options. So instead of having to rebuild it every time, you can maximize your efficiency by building them in a way that you can reuse them. As I said earlier, there's no licenses that are required from GP to design or run reports. So if you own GP and you're on, assuming you're on the newest license model, you are entitled to Management Reporter, and pretty much anybody can use it, and they don't need to consume a GP license while doing so. And then finally, just to note, we're not going to cover this today because it's more of an advanced topic, but there is a built-in security mechanism in Management Reporter that allows you to control access to reports and what they can do in terms of designing or generating the reports and so on. So just a quick comparison of a few products, because we hear a lot of questions about, should I use Management Reporter? Is it still being developed and things like that? So the first thing I'll say is Management Reporter is not dead. And if you Google Management Reporter, one of the first links that comes up is Management Reporter is dead. Please realize that is a paid ad for a company that's trying to sell you something similar to Management Reporter. Now, having said that, it's not always the best tool. There are other tools, the other ones that we support are Power BI and BI 360, although there is a variety of other tools as well. Those are the two most common competitors for Management Reporter. Of course, Power BI is made by Microsoft, but really the intention of the reporting engine is different. So Management Reporter, as I said, is for doing financial reports. It's not really meant to build sort of queries around salespeople's commissions or things like that. For those types of reports, you're going to want to use either SmartList or SmartList Builder, which we've covered in previous webinars, or you can also use Power BI and BI 360. Now, they're highly configurable and they're very flexible and they can pull data from almost anywhere, but of course with that flexibility comes complexity. So Management Reporter is kind of like the accountant's tool, if you want to think about it that way, and it's meant to be used by accountants. And it's really good for driving financial statements. Okay, so with that, I think we will hop into the training. So let me get out of here, and if I've been lucky, then everybody should be seeing Management Reporter up on their screen. So Management Reporter is not inside of GP, so here's my GP window. Management Reporter is a separate application, so if you don't have it, you should contact your IT people, or you can contact us if we're your partner, or you can transfer your partner to us, and then we'll help you as well. And you need to get it installed.
Nice, Jason. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm always plugging for you. So, it is a separate application, and you do need to have it installed. It can be installed on a terminal server or on your local desktop. And there is a web interface for the actual reports themselves. So the people that are running reports, if you want to publish links, they do not need to have anything installed. But there are some advantages to installing the report viewer. And I'm going to come back to that after we do some really simple reports, just as a quick demo. So the first thing is, I've already been logged into Management Reporter. So the first time you log in, it would come up looking like this. And this would list all of the companies that have been deployed in Management Reporter. In our case, of course, we're working with the sample company, so it's just the one. But when it first pops up, you'll see that there's no checkbox. I already have a checkbox here because I've logged in the past. But what you need to do is you need to select the company that you want to log into by default, and then set as default. I can't because it's already been set. And then at that point in the background, you'll see it'll load this interface here. And you can always tell which company you're logged into here at the bottom. So I'm logged in the World Online or Fabricam, and this is the user that I'm logged in as. It is integrated with Active Directory, so you don't need to know your username and password. Thankfully, there's no username and password for Management Reporter. It uses your credentials from your network. Along the left here, we have the blades for the various building blocks that I was talking about earlier. So we have report definitions, row definitions, column definitions, and reporting trees. And then, of course, for reports themselves, you can group them together. That's really just for accelerating your reporting when you're doing publishing. And then report schedules, so you can schedule the reports to generate overnight, for example, so that if you have very large data sets, and this is another advantage over Power BI and BI 360, it actually will cache the reports for you overnight so that when you come in the next day, they're ready to run and you don't have to wait. And then, of course, security. So today we're just going to be talking about these four blades here. And we're going to start with the report definition itself. So this is where you tell Management Reporter how you want to run the reports. So I'm going to go to these default report definitions. These are the sample ones. We're going to come back after I do a quick tour of the report viewer and build a sample so you can see what it's like and how you build your own column and row definitions. But for now, we're just going to use one of the pre-built ones. So I'm going to choose this top one here, the 12-month rolling P&L. So when we open this, we get the report definition window where we can select a bunch of different options for the report. The most important one is right here in the middle. This is the period that you're running it on. Because I'm logged into the sample company and it forces you to use a date of 2027, the years here are kind of messed up. But essentially, it will always default to the previous month of the year that you're in when you open the window, because it assumes you want to run last month's financial statements. But you can very easily change it. So I do need to change this. I'm going to change it to 2027, and we'll use period 4. Now, Fabricam is on a calendar year end, so the fiscal year ends on December 31st. So when I choose period 4, it knows it's April. But obviously, that will adjust if your year end is, April to March. Period 4 would be, what is that, August? So it is adjusting according to the fiscal period setup in GP. This is your default base period. It's set to current, and I can't change it because, again, we're reporting in the future, but normally this would be S-1, which is one of the options in this drop list. It just means use the system date minus 1 month, and that's why, by default, when you open a report, it would go to the previous month. But you can control that behavior by changing this default base period. So cur means use current. So when I opened it up, obviously, it couldn't select a period from 2026 or from 2018 because Fabricam starts in 2026. So that's why we're in 2027. These are the building blocks that make up the report. So this is the row definition that's using and the column definition. We'll come back to that a bit later. For now, I just want to generate a report so you guys can see how we use the reporting interface. So up at the top here, once you've got everything set, you just click Generate, and it's going to pop up this window. You can see we've had a couple of errors in the past. They go away after a few days, but they show kind of as a log for any errors that have happened. And you can see the current activity at the top, and it shows you details of what it's doing. So right now it's rounding. When it finishes, the report will pop up in Internet Explorer, or in Edge, or Chrome, or whatever your default browser is. So this is a sample report that comes with Management Reporter. A couple of things to go over quickly. Obviously, this is just a simple income statement. We can search inside the report. So if you want to look for something, you can type the text in here and click Next, and it'll find the next closest match. Down here, we have report options, which allows you to change your base period and year. You can refresh. So if you have people, for example, that are logged in GP posting transactions, and you want to see the result of those, you can just click refresh, and it will refresh the data. The data does not necessarily have to be posted, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes, but essentially it refreshes the data from the database. Publish, if I click this button, it publishes the report. I'll go ahead and do it. It publishes the report in the report library. So that's telling Management Reporter, this report is working, it's good, I want to publish it. So if you click that button, it'll do its thing, and then it'll come back, so we'll give it a minute. Okay, and I'll show you the result of that in a few minutes when we go to the report viewer, but for now, just know that it's been published. Go to lets you go to, if you've made bookmarks in your report row definition, this allows you to select one of those bookmarks. So if I click net income, see how it scrolls to the bottom of the report and takes me right there. So it's just a convenient way of navigating around the report. You do need to create the bookmarks in order for that to work. You can change currencies. So if you wanted to change from US to Canadian, you could do that here. Any reporting currencies that you have set up in Management Reporter will show, or sorry, in GP will show here. In Fabricam, it's just the two. And there is going to be a future webinar about multi-currency consolidation. We'll come to that that's more of an advanced topic, but just be aware that Management Reporter is multi-currency aware. Show lets you choose what you want to see. So we can do charts and comments. If there were any charts attached to this report, they would show here in this little widget. If I wanted to add a comment, for example, about sales, whoops, I didn't mean to click the sales line. I just wanted to click on the box that you want. If you click the link, it'll drill. So if you just click on the box that you want to put the comment in, and then click plus, wow, whoa, John did well. Save. And now you can tell that there's a comment because it puts a little icon there to let you know there's a comment related. Sorry, John, did you have something to say about that?
No, I think that's true. Generally, I do a great job.
All right. So show and sorry, the other options there, if you just want to see the summary lines, the header and footer and previous reports, this will show you other reports that you've run in the past. But to keep it nice and clean, let's turn these guys back off here. And Zoom, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Print is self-explanatory. Download's an important one. So you can do two things here. You can download it to Excel, which will take the report and spit it out into an Excel file. And there's some options which we're going to come back to in a minute in the report options that define how it's going to look in Excel. But essentially, it just opens this report in Excel-friendly format. And Management Reporter Viewer, we're going to show you in a couple of minutes after we finish this. Oh, and then finally settings, which is just about. So there's really nothing there. So let's close this web window for a minute. And we're going to go to my desktop. Minimize all this stuff. So I have Report Viewer here on my desktop. This you can install. This is like typically installed on all the executive laptops or workstations. And it just gives them a way of accessing the reports in a more convenient way than the web window. So both of them will work. But I'm going to open this up, and here's the library that I was mentioning before. Let me maximize this guy. So you can see here, this is the report I just generated at 218, the single 12-month rolling. So when I double-click it, it opens it up, and you have all the same options. I just find it's a little bit more friendly when it comes to doing drilling and when you're using trees. I find this interface just a little bit more convenient to use than the web one, but it is a matter of preference. You can see my comment shows here, John did well. Essentially, this is just another way of viewing the report. Another cool thing you can do in here is you can email the reports using a link. And you can also convert it to XPS, which is kind of like a PDF. It's Microsoft XPS format. So it's readable by almost any Windows workstation. All right. So let's hop back into Management Reporter and get into more of the good stuff. So we're going to go through all of the options that are here in the report option, and then I'm going to go back out and build a row and column definition for you so you can see how it's all put together. So the first thing we'll go over is the main page here. So this is where it says at company name, or company name, and it says at any. If you wanted to choose so that this report could only run against the World Online, the TWO company, you could choose that. But the convenient thing is if you leave it at any, this allows you to consolidate across multiple companies, because essentially Management Reporter pulls the data from all of the companies in GP, assuming you have it set up to do so, and it allows you to consolidate those reports. So that's why at any is the most common option there. But if it was a report specific to one database in GP or one company, you could choose that so that people don't accidentally run it against the wrong company. If you use at any, it looks at what company you're logged into to determine which company to pull from. Detail level, financial and accounts, so we can pull just financial data. In other words, it's just going to pull the numbers. If you pull financial and account, that allows you to drill down. So if you have categories, financial categories set up, and let's say it's sales, and then inside sales you have sales, sales and service. If you choose the category level, when you look at it at the financial level, it'll just show you the roll-up. Whereas if you have financial and account, you'd be able to drill down and see your sales for hardware and your sales for service. And then, of course, financial, account, and transaction actually pulls the transaction level data into the report, and you can drill all the way through down to see the individual transactions that make up the roll-up. And we're going to cover that again later. I'll show you what it looks like when you actually make that change. Here, I mentioned earlier, we have the ability to pull posted and unposted activity. So if you wanted to design the report so that it's really sort of real time, you could choose this option here. And anytime you click that refresh button, it will pull the data for even unposted transactions. So that's just a handy option. This is if you wanted to automatically include all the reporting currencies when it generates the report. If you don't choose this, you can still change the reporting currency at runtime, but it has to run it. So it just is a time saver. It just makes it so that it'll include it when you generate, so that the user doesn't have to wait. Here we already covered about the reporting periods. These are the building blocks that make it up. And if you want to go look at this row definition, you can simply click this icon and it'll jump over and take you there. Just a matter of convenience. Sorry, let me move this, close that. Trees we'll come back to in a little while. There's none attached here. Output and distribution. So this is kind of how you want the report to generate and what you want it to include. So this is the name of the report, how it would appear in the report library. If you check this off, it'll open the report. As soon as you click generate and it finishes, it'll pop up like it did when we just ran it a minute ago. But if you don't, if you're just generating it for other people to run it, you can uncheck this and it'll save you the convenience of closing the window. Here you can tell it whether you want to generate it to a single report library or multiple libraries. And you can create as many libraries in Management Reporter Viewer as you'd like. And you can also secure them. So that's, again, a topic for another day that we're going to cover, but it's a way of sort of securing who can see what reports is by generating different library nodes. You also have the option of doing it as a file. So here we have a URL or a link that we would publish to, so that when we publish the report, it goes in, like, for example, in SharePoint or into a file library. These are all pretty self-explanatory, so I won't go through them in too much detail, but we have options that you can turn on the headers and footers, and you can include the bookmarks. That's those bookmarks I was showing you. Down here, this one's kind of important for those of you that are going to be using Excel. These are the options for when you click download in the report viewer and bring it to Excel. This is how it will treat Excel, and one of the most important ones here is this generate to a single worksheet. So if you check this off, it will roll up all of the divisions or departments that you have into a single worksheet. That can get kind of long, so usually we leave it unticked, and what it'll do is for each division or segment in your GL, you'll get a tab along the bottom of Excel. And of course, you can include the formulas and comments and all that sort of thing. Some people don't want the comments when they generate to Excel, so just be aware that you can turn that off. Headers and footers. This is where you can tell Management Reporter what you want to print on the 6 sections, the top, middle, and the top left, middle, and top right, and same thing with the bottom of the report. So by default, it comes with nothing, but of course, this is a sample report. So we're seeing, at the top right, it's going to show page 5 of 7, so you know what page you're on. The date it was printed and the time it was printed and the report name and the company description. Now you can attach images as well if you want to put your logo. So if we click this button, I've already preloaded our ATOM logo. What I'd like to do here is we'll just move this to the center. So I'm just going to cut and paste it because you can't mix images with text. So once you use one of these to put an image, you can't have text in it as well. So now that I've moved that, I'm going to go images and I'm going to, oops, I don't want to add, I just want to select it. So now you can see it puts ATOM. That's indicating that the logo will now print at the top left. And another thing to know is that you don't need to know these codes. If you double click in the area, oops, sorry, up here, insert auto text, you don't double click, my bad. It gives you a bunch of choices of things that you can pick from, so you don't need to memorize these silly codes. So if you wanted to make it, for example, I don't know, let's do period, no, that's a silly one. Let's just go with rounding precision. I know that's a ridiculous one, but just to give you an example of how you do it. Okay, and then we'll go to settings. You can choose the rounding precision. So if you choose no rounding, obviously it's not going to round off even the cents, but you have the ability to control it all the way up to whole billions. I do hope some of you guys have that problem where you need to round to the nearest billion. Here's the calculation priority. Now, what this is about is if you have a lot of calculations in your report, sometimes it can make a difference whether it's doing row calculations before columns. So this is how you would reverse that order in case that's impacting your calculations in the report. This is for when you're using trees. So you can have it pop up, which is what it does right now, select units at runtime. So if you have multiple segments, for example, again, let's say divisions, instead of just generating it for all divisions, when I run the report, it would pop up and ask me which divisions I want to run it for. Or you can tell it to always include all units, or you can tell it a specific number of units from the top. There is also this is more for the formatting, the layout, like the margins and things like that. And there's a bunch more options in here, which I'm not going to go through. They're pretty self-explanatory. If you do have any questions, of course, you can reach out to us about that. And then over here you have some other options, like whether you want your numbers to display with a negative sign or you want to have the brackets. Do you want them in red? Let's do that for fun. Display the currency symbol on the first row. So these are all just options that you can select when you're defining your report. And then you just click save, and it does remember all of them. So you don't need to do this every time. The concept is you set all of this up once, and then you just run it every time. So now let's just regenerate it. We'll see the pretty logo, hopefully, at the top. Make sure it's working. And then I'm going to go out and build a custom row and column definition so you can see how the sausage is made. All right, so now we see my logo. This has been moved into the middle. And if I scroll to the bottom, I should see my no rounding, right? So just handy ways of making the report look the way you want it to look. Okay, so let's get out of here. I'm going to close this down. And I'm going to go to row definitions. And what we're going to do is we're just going to build a really simple report. I'm going to do a sales type report where I'm going to show, gross sales and then the direct cost of sales, just as an example. So you can see here you have a couple of folders. You can create folders. It's just for organizational purposes. It doesn't have any impact on anything. It's just so that, if you've got 7 or 8 different companies and you want to keep them organized, you can create a new folder here and you'll call it Company A. And it's just for your own organization, not for anything else. So we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to click New. And we come up with a blank row definition. Now we're going to go through these one by one, but just right off the bat, what rows refer to are essentially, at the most granular level, accounts. But you can roll them up and use categories instead of accounts, but that's really what we're defining here. And then the columns would be like the column for the current period, for the year-to-date, for the budget, for maybe last year comparison. So those are the columns and these are the rows. By default, you'll see that it's numbered a bunch of these rows. You can change them, and you can put text in here. These are references. So if I want to reference this row somewhere else, if I'm doing a total, for example, or a calculation, I can refer to this row by number 130. But I can also give it an actual name. So if you wanted to give it a label like sales, now later on in the report when I'm doing calculations, if I'm doing a total, I could do sales minus expenses, for example. But let's just leave it the way it was for now. The description is what will print on the description part of the report. So this is like usually the account name. And by default, when I select account, it'll pull the GP account name in this field, but you can always change it. This is a format code. So this tells Management Reporter what the row is for. So if you leave it none, this is actually a new with one of the updates that just came out, it will just print a blank line. The other way to print a blank line is to change it to description, in which case it's looking to print whatever is here. But if you just leave it blank, it would print it as a blank line. Total is for doing totaling, and cal is for complex calculations. I'm not going to go through all of these, but let's just look at the most important ones. So that you have the ability to do underscores under the amounts. So when you get to the bottom of, for example, your sales and you want to have a line, you can underscore the amounts with this. This prints an actual line across the page. That will double underscore those amounts. And then these are just lines that go across the page. And then you can do boxing. Remark is if you wanted to type a remark in Management Reporter row definition that doesn't show anywhere else. It's kind of like if you have a really complicated calculation and you want to explain in case other users are trying to figure out what you did, you could put a remark there and then just write, the instructions or the description of what you're doing. And then you've got some sorting options. If you're doing a calculated field, this is where the formula would go. Or if you're limiting it to a specific division or segment or of your GL, this is also where you can do that. Format override. So this is if you want, by default, it's going to look at the general ledger setup for that account to determine what it is. If it's a unit account, it would just put the number. And if it's obviously a currency account, it's going to treat it as currency, but you can override them. This is handy when you're doing percentages in the rows. Typical balance. So if you leave it blank, it's going to, this is just to normalize the sign on your income statement and balance sheet. So if you're looking at an income statement and you're looking at income comes over as a negative number. So in that case, you want to let it know that it is a credit, and that way it won't put a negative sign in front of the amount. Print control. So this is just some additional controls you can do. Non-printing row tells it suppress that row, don't print it. You can suppress it in certain conditions. And by the way, these are multi-select, so you can see as I select them, they're highlighting. You can choose to leave 0 columns blank. You can suppress rounding, a whole bunch of good stuff there. We're not going to cover today, but just so you know that's there. This is a column restriction. So if this row that we're on right now, I wanted to prevent it from printing on a particular column, this is where you just populate it with the column label, and it'll know not to print it. This is a row modifier, just a way of modifying the period for this row. So instead of using the report definition, it would override it with these. And then this is probably the most important one. This is the link to the financial dimension so that Management Reporter knows where to get the data. So if I double click here, we have a bunch of different ways we can get at that. And in fact, let's maybe do one now. So I'm going to build, as I said, a sales report. So for me, the easiest way to get my sales, I could go account by account. So I double click in here and I could click look up and then scroll down to my sales area and start picking them one at a time. And then you could just keep adding them. So this is a plus. It's indicating that you're adding them together. You can change the sign to a negative if you're trying to deduct. But normally you would use plus, and then you would go to your next account. But that's not really an efficient way of doing it because it's very manual. So a faster way, if you've set up categories in GP, is to double click on the account category, and now we could simply pull our sales. Okay, and again, you could do a range. So if you wanted to go from sales to sales returns, maybe, so you're getting, the offset for those returns, that will do the 2. And we click OK, and we can see now this is linked to the account category sales and sales returns. And we can give it a label. I'll call it net sales, maybe. And now we'll pull in maybe an individual account. So let's go and look up some, and I should cover it too, by the way. So you can also pull by division or department. That's not used in the type of report we're building now, but it comes in handy for some other types of reports. So we will cover that in another session. For now, I'm just going to pull some individual accounts. And I happen to be smart enough to write them down so I don't have to scroll through that whole window. I know it's 5130, which is commissions. I'm looking at John's commissions here. And they better not be too high. And you'll notice now when I click OK, it populates the name of the account. It couldn't do that here because I picked more than one, so it doesn't know which one to choose, so it just leaves it blank. But if you pick an individual account or an individual category, it'll automatically populate the description for you. Let's just pick one more just to make it interesting. So I'll use telephone, because I know John likes to yap a lot on the phone.
Wow.
Remember when you called me old? All right, so
yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, so let's just keep it nice and simple like this for now. I don't want to go too far because people might start to get lost. I'm going to click Save. Okay, we've got to give it a name. I'm going to call it Webinar 1. And now you'll see under Webinar, or sorry, at the top here I have Webinar 1. Let's close this. Now that we've saved it, I'm going to drag it and pull it into my Webinar folder just for organization, because I'm one of those types of people. And now we'll go back to, now we're going to develop a column definition. So again, same thing, I click columns and then click new. You can also click the little drop arrow here and that'll let you pick anything that you want to create. But for our purposes, we're good. So now we need, well, we need at least two things to make a report work. We need a description so that it puts the name of the account, and we need the amount. So let's do that now. So under column type, this is where you tell Management Reporter what the type of column it's going to be. So if it's FD, financial dimension, that means it's going to be pulling information from GP. If you want a description, you would pick the description column, and that's going to tell Management Reporter whatever's written in the row's description on the report, on the row definition, that's what I want you to print here. And that's usually the first row. You can see here when I choose that, it chooses auto fit. You can choose the column widths, and there's a whole bunch of stuff here, but we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to try to keep this simple. So now we need a header for it, so let's just call this description. And something I should point out is I do recommend that you create your own styles here, rather than sort of every time you're doing a report, you know, picking the fonts and the colors and all that sort of thing. You can create styles. It comes with a few out of the box, but I strongly recommend you take the time to set that up. That way you can ensure that all of your reports will follow the same sort of look and feel. I'm just going to pick column header, and now see how it bolds it and it changes the font. But you can set up as many styles as you want, and then that gives you the ability to be consistent and also saves you time down the road. So I would take the time to set that up initially. I'm going to make it blue just to make it stand out. And then in the second column, we're going to need a financial dimension. So let's pick that under the column type. So now this is telling it, pull from the financial data that you've got. Now let's do, so let's go through these first. So the book code is actual. You could change that to budget if you want, and it would pull from the budgets. The fiscal year, base tells it whatever I select on the report definition that we did back at the beginning, pull the base from that. Now you can override that and give it a year, like hard code it, so that it always pulls 2016, for example, or 2015. But the more traditional way to do that is to put base -1. So if you're doing a year-over-year comparison, this would be base, and then the next one would be base -1. So that will tell it, look at the current period of this year against the current period of last year. This is the period now. So again, pulling from the report definition, it's looking at the base. So it's basically going to pull the month, but if you were doing a month-over-month comparison, you could do base and then base -1. And then this is telling it what kind of a column it is. Is it periodic, or is it year-to-date, or is it year-to-date with the beginning balance, or periodic with the beginning balance? Now these two with the beginning balance are handy because, as all of you probably know, when you don't close GP, those balances are not brought forward. So if you're running your balance sheet, let's say you have a calendar fiscal year end, and you haven't closed off up to December, and we're in January, and you want to run a financial report in January, you can't because there's no balances to bring forward for the balance sheet. But if you choose this option, Management Reporter will automatically pull those balances brought forward, even though you haven't closed your books. So it's just a handy way of getting financial data on the fly without needing to finish all of your closing process. So for our purposes, we're just going to do periodic. You can also do formulas in the columns, and if you were, that would be one of these choices here where it's calc. This is where you would put the formula. Let's do one more. Actually, maybe we'll do two more. So let's do an actual, but let's do year to date. And then we're going to do one more, and we'll do this as actual, but we'll do fiscal year base minus 1. Just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And we want this to be year to date as well. Okay, and then now we need descriptions along the top. Now, one thing I can tell you that's handy here is you don't need to, because a lot of people put current and then year to date, but you might want it to say the actual month rather than just current. So to do that, you can actually double click and you have this auto text again. So if we click insert auto text, we can put the month name, which I find very handy. Let's not do long though, let's do short. Abbreviated month name. Oops, it's concatenating on there. And now this one will pull the actual year. So we'll say this is the fiscal year that we're looking at. And then the same thing here. And what we'll do is we'll apply our same column heading. Just to make it look pretty. And let's save. Now I'm going to jump. Oh, now I have to give it a name. And now we've got a basic row and column definition defined. So let's get out of here and go back to our report definitions. We're going to create a new one of those. Again, it's complaining because I'm in 2027. It's complaining about the year, but that's, you can ignore that. So now I'm going to leave everything set to the defaults. I'm simply going to tell it I want you to use webinar 1 row and webinar 1 column. Nice, simple report. Let's generate and see what we get. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies. All right, so you can see here, it's pulling the year names. There was no data for 2023, so it came up blank there. But here's 2024. This is just January, so this would just represent 1 month. So the current period and the year are the same. Now let's take a look at some of these options we have. So right now I can't drill on anything because there's nothing to drill into. I've told it only pull the financial level data. Let's hop out real quick and we'll do a couple of changes. I know we're running close on time here. So I want to go back out. One thing I noticed is my report definition, the sales were coming up negative because I didn't tell it that it is a credit. So we're putting a C there to tell it to do that. And let's make this a little bit more complicated now. So we'll give this a style. Let's call it net sales. And then let's insert a row. So I can right click in here and insert a new row just to give me some space. And now let's call it cost of sales. And we'll make this the same kind of bold. And now let's do a total. Now again, if I want to tell Management Reporter to do a total, I need to go to this format code here and choose TOT, T-O-T. You can also do a calculation, but TOT is the simple way for adding and subtracting only. So if I do total, there's 2 ways you can tell it that it's a total. You can say, I want 190 plus 220. It's really that simple. Or if it's a longer, for example, if you wanted to do a sum of a larger range, you can do 190 colon 220. And that says everything between row 190 and row 220. And so this will give us a total here at the bottom of these two. So we've made it a little bit more sophisticated. Let's get out of here. And we'll do our save our changes. Now we're back to the report definition. Let's put a header and footer on it. We'll just put my image in there. Oops. And we're also going to maybe just put a page number. All right. got to give the report definition a name. Close that. Oops, I didn't mean to close it. Apologies. Let's generate it again and see what we got. Okay, now we're getting a bit more data. Oh, this is the wrong report. That's probably why. Sorry about that. Here it is. I'm going to change my base period as well. I'm going to go to April, because that way we'll see the difference between the current and the year-to-date. Let's generate that guy again.
Kane's coming out shortly.
Yeah. All right, there we go. So now we've got, now it shows April instead of January, and you can see that this is a different number. What I'm going to do as a last step before we pass it back to John is I'm going to go and I'm just going to add a tree to this really quickly to show you how that works. And then we're also going to include more detail in the report so you can see how the drilling will work. So let's close out of here. I'm going to go to reporting tree definitions. And we're going to create a new reporting tree. So by default, you can see that it's just going to pull any and a summary of all units, which basically is a roll-up of everything. One thing that's handy is you can go, instead of, if you don't know all of your financial dimension labels and whatnot, it's easy just to go up to Edit and then Insert Reporting Units from Dimensions. It knows by default this is the stuff it's pulling from GP. This is from the Fabricam company. Pretty much accepted as is, although you can modify it if you want to see less detail. And you can see here now we have our tree structure. So for 00, which is corporate headquarters, for division 000, which is the main business unit, those are all of the things. And then you go into by department, or sorry, by division and then department. Department and then division. So it's very easy to build a tree. You can modify it just by going in this section here and changing the links. And you can also change the descriptions if you want. But for now, let's just accept it as is because we're running out of time. So I'm going to save this. I'll call it Webinar 1. And we're back to our report definition. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say I want a reporting tree. And I'm going to choose the one I just made. Let's make the starting unit default to the summary of all. And let's also change the detail level here from financial all the way down to transaction. And now we're going to save this guy, and we're going to click Generate. So again, because I had that option set where it asks every time you run the report, it's popping up. So I would just click Select All and click OK.
Cue Jeopardy sounds.
Okay, so here we are. Now you'll notice as I hover over this, it gives me a finger telling me that it's a link. So if I wanted to drill in and see more about this April sales that John's done of 104,000, I can click it, and it's going to drive into my reporting tree. And it's all coming from sales from corporate headquarters, so I'm going to drill into that. And now I can see by department, or sorry, by division. So these are the divisional numbers for that, and I can drill in even further, and I can actually see the breakdown here, and I can drill even further. And now this takes me to the actual transactions that have been happening. Oh, keep going further, sorry. There's our transactions. So these invoices made up that number of 11709.56. So it's just very flexible in terms of how you can build the report. Let's go all the way back.
We're just about out of time.
Yeah. So I'm actually pretty much done. I'm sure there's going to be some questions, but yeah, that's how to build a rudimentary report in Management Reporter. Again, we will be covering more complex topics in future webinars, so stay tuned for those coming up. And John, I think I'll pass it back to you.
All right. throw my beautiful slide deck back there, and we'll sort of wrap up and do some giveaways here. And I do see that there is some questions. So Jason, you can start reading through those. I see 3 or 4, I think. Okay, so next events. So we have one coming up in August on Power BI. Actually just seen sort of an outline of what this is going to look like this morning. It's going to be a great session. So we're basically going to be demonstrating what Power BI looks like with the content pack that Microsoft has released specifically for GP. So if you've been thinking about, reporting and Power BI, and you want to know what it looks like and how much it costs, definitely do not miss this session. There's only I think about 13 or 15 spots left. So go sign up. That's going to be a great one. And again, it's only a month away. The next thing is a quick poll. So as always, I'm interested to know sort of what webinar topic you would like us to cover next. So I'm going to throw a few different topics up here. And you can pick any of them that are of interest to you guys. And if none of them are of interest, and I've selected bad topics, click something else, then maybe shoot us an idea, and we will cover that next. Okay, we'll close it in about 15 seconds here. Jason, I think the 1 hour Q&A session would give you a real workout. Questions of all sorts and challenges would be coming in.
Maybe we should do an AMA.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this poll up here. Just give you a quick look at what it looks like. Close. So it looks like budgeting may be interesting, and project accounting. Actually, that's one that we haven't done in a while.
Yeah, we did one in, what was that? It was probably October or September.
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue into sort of my next few slides. So thank you, everybody, for that. We'll be coming back to those sort of responses, and I'll be putting the next topic up in probably a week or so. For any of you who are not on our mailing list, also shoot me an email, and I'll make sure that you're put on the list so that you hear from us, and we keep everybody in the loop on things like next versions and whatever you need to know from the GP world. So last couple things here before we do giveaways, and I turn it over to Jason for questions, is our previous sessions. So all of our webinars are posted on the resource section of our site, including our previous session on project accounting. So you're welcome to go and watch that recorded video. You should be able to access almost all of our sessions from the resource section. So go check them out. The one that we did a few weeks ago on workflows is posted and online, so that actually can be checked out right now. And last thing is sort of the shameless plug. I really appreciate all the support. And again, if any of you have any opportunity to work with us, or maybe you're looking for a partner to support you, we'd love that opportunity. So please shoot us a note, and we will talk soon. So maybe we'll move on to questions, and we'll end with giveaways.
All right. So there are quite a few questions here. A lot of them are, I'm sorry, I'm just going through them all. Some of them are duplicates, but let's go with this one first. So the first question was, can anyone download Report Viewer even if they do not have access to GP? And if so, what is the link? So the answer is yes. Anybody can install Management Reporter. It can be downloaded from Customer Source. So if you don't have that link, I'm sure John would be happy to forward you a link to the Partner Source and Customer Source website. It's a free download, and you can just, as long as you have a current on your enhancement plan with Microsoft, you're able to download it, and it's a small installation package. So it's just an MSI or an EXE, an executable, and you double-click and run it on the workstation, and away you go. So we'll get that link out to you if you don't know where to find Customer Source, and maybe, John, you'll take note of that.
Got it.
Next question is a little funny. It's, can someone give Ava her screen time? She really seems to want it. So you probably noticed my daughter there popping up requesting more screen time. The answer is my wife did give her more time, so that's why she stopped. But thank you for that. We have Management Reporter in our app availability, but I only see Security Blade. Yes, you're being restricted. So the question is, are we being restricted? Yes, if the only thing you can see is the Security Blade, that means that you've been given admin privileges probably, or security privileges, but not report designer or report viewer or report generator permissions. So if you go back to your IT guys and ask them to put you in a report designer role, report designers can do everything. There's also an MR admin role, which gives you access to everything, including all the security. So I would reach out to them. How do we get companies to show in Management Reporter? That's actually a great question. So inside, on the server where Management Reporter server is running, so this is an IT type issue, there's a configuration console. That's where you go and you tell Management Reporter which companies you want to pull data from. That's something that we can certainly help with if people need assistance getting their companies to show, but it is something you need to do on the server. And then the last question I see that wasn't unique, that is unique rather, is can you pull from other sources? And the answer is yes. It does support external sources. You can pull from ODBC connections. You can pull from Excel. You can pull from JET databases and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it is possible to bring in data from another source. And really, if you go back in time, Management Reporter was built to run on all versions of Dynamics, as well as a whole bunch of third parties like SAP and stuff like that. So it does support being used with other financial systems, not just GP. That's all I got, John.
All right. Time for me to be the Bob Barker of GP. Is that a fair comparison? I don't know.
No.
Okay. No, probably not. Okay, so the giveaways. So I have 4 names here. Matthew Y, Kenneth C, Richard S, and Lynn V. So all of you will hear from me tomorrow or Monday, if it's a bit hectic, but I'll try and shoot a note to everybody tomorrow. So another big thank you to you all. Really appreciate it. And hopefully poor Ava gets some more screen time soon. We'll see you guys in a few weeks for the Power BI webinar, which is August 16th. Go sign up, and thank you. Jason, thanks for the help.
Yep. Thank you, John, and thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attention.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.